Hey everyone, welcome back to Barter Hordes. My name is Robert. This is my Friday Reads check-in video, although I'm cheating and I'm filming it Thursday evening. I just know I'm going to be too busy tomorrow to film a video, and I've already finished the book today that I was hoping to finish in order to include in this video, so I'm good to go. I figured I'd just film it and schedule it for tomorrow morning and forget it. So it's a really busy week. Obviously, this is the weekend we announce the BookTube Prize winner. A bunch of people are coming to town tomorrow and spending the weekend. Kind of our first unofficial meetup version of what I hope will grow into the BookTube Prize Festival once we get funded and can afford to bring authors in and publishers and do a whole mini book festival each year to announce each year's winner. More on that as the details become available. It's been a really good reading week for me in terms of the number of books I've finished, although in terms of my enjoyment of them, it's just been kind of on the fence. I had one good experience and a bunch of really mediocre ones. I think this coming week, however, is going to be a terrific one because the books I've started last night and today, they've all been really interesting. So I'm looking forward to getting further into those this week. So let's talk about the ones that I finished. The first one I finished, you've heard me talk about for weeks now, and that is Frank Herbert's Dune. I've been doing this in 20 and 30-minute increments as I walk my dog over the last several weeks. And I've been doing the audio version. First of all, I don't recommend the audio version for this particular book. They made some really weird choices, and I don't think it helps the book. But I wasn't going to read and try to walk at the same time, so I went ahead and did the audio. It is 21 hours long, too, just so you know. I did not get along with Dune at all. I know Dune is considered, a keystone classic of science fiction writing. It came out in the 1960s, I think 1965, and it has influenced the genre ever since then. But as a reading experience for me, it was just dismal. It's long. Like I said, the audio was 21 hours. It felt like hundreds and hundreds of pages of info dump and jibber jabber, just talking endlessly, and this pseudo mystical nonsense. I did not like that at all. On the rare occasion when something actually happens, it's very condensed action, and it sounds or reads like a scene with a James Bond villain where it's very melodramatic and just over the top. And I just found myself rolling my eyes constantly. So I unfortunately did not get along with this one at all. And there's no way in hell I'll read any more in the Dune series. So if Dune is one of your favorite books, I'm sorry, I hope we can still be friends, but please don't ask me to read any more in that series. It didn't make me want to run out and read any more science fiction either, although I've been trying to be more open to science fiction. The next one I finished, I mentioned starting last week, and that's Ask Again Yes by Mary Beth Keane. This is a 2019 new release. And it's the story of two families who, both of the fathers are New York City policemen. They were briefly partners, and one of them buys a house in this suburb north of the city and tells the other one that the house next to him is available, and so the other one moves in. They're not super close friends, but they're casual acquaintances, and the families don't really like each other at all, except for the two teenagers. One of them is a young teenage girl. I think she might be, I don't know, maybe a freshman or a sophomore, and the other one is a teenage boy, and they fall in love despite the fact that their families don't get along. And the boy's mother, Peter's mother, is mentally unstable. She's viciously mean. She melts down in public a lot. And there is a calamity in this family, and it tears the families apart. It tears the two sweethearts apart. And then the book follows them on as they go through college, and come back together again. And so it's the story of these two families and how they are ripped apart by the circumstances that they find themselves in, and how they try to cope with that. And some of them cope well, some of them don't cope at all. I really enjoyed the first half of it, but I felt myself losing steam with the second half. The writing is fine. I can't remember if this is a debut or not. I don't think it is. Maybe it's a second novel. The writing was fine, but by the end of it, I was ready for it to be finished. And so it was a good read, but not a great read for me. So that one's Ask Again, Yes, by Mary Beth Keane. The next one I finished was my nonfiction read this week, and that was a memoir called Motherland by Elissa Altman. And at the sentence level, I really enjoyed the writing of this memoir, but the story itself just made me so angry. I've mentioned in a couple of other videos that I'm growing really tired of New York stories, and this is classic New York story. As the author even says at one point in the book, this is the story of two privileged, or entitled, I think is the way she says it, two entitled New York Jewish white women. And that's the author and her mother. And her mother is the worst person, literally, in the world. She is shallow, she's manipulative, she's hateful, she's childish, she's never done anything really for herself, and she resents ever having to do anything for herself, and she demands to be the center of attention in every situation, or she throws a tantrum. There's a scene in there, and I mentioned in my Goodreads review, I think the only person in this book who has any common sense is the author's wife. I think her name's Susan. The mother of the author shows up for a Thanksgiving at their Connecticut house, and they have invited some neighbors who I guess I forget their story, but the mother, when she found out she was not going to be the sole center of attention at that Thanksgiving dinner, melted down and was saying horribly cruel things. And Susan called a black car, I think a Lincoln or something, and sent her mother-in-law back to New York, said, "You have to leave." And that's the only time anybody in this book ever tells this mother no. The daughter swears she has independence from her mother, that she became an independent woman, but there's no evidence of it in this book. It is the most annoying story of the inability of either mother or daughter to cut apron strings that I've ever read. It's almost cartoonish in its absurdity at times, what this mother was like. And so it was a very frustrating read from that point of view. I know mother-daughter relationships are very fraught, especially only children. I was witness to one for 16 years. It was nothing like this relationship. This was just weird. It reminded me, if you've watched my channel for a long time, I read a book maybe early in this year, maybe last year. It was a memoir by the daughter of Leonard Bernstein. And it's the same kind of story. These people are nuts. And I'm convinced that living in New York is part of it. But I just really hated the people in this book so much that I had no sympathy or empathy with anything that they experienced, because it's all self-inflicted. So that one did not go too well. I think I am done with memoirs for a while, because I kind of bristle at self-involved people anyway. And the genre almost demands that you become self-involved and spend a lot of time navel-gazing to write a memoir. And the last several that I've read have just turned me off, because there are other things in the world to think about than those kinds of problems. So that one did not work too well for me. Although Elissa Altman, as a prose stylist, is quite good. Then the bright spot of the week is one that I actually went into not expecting to like. I had seen some kind of mixed, kind of lukewarm reviews of Disappearing Earth by Julia Phillips. And it's just been nominated for one of the big prizes. I don't know. I always get these confused, which long list goes with which. I don't know if it's the Booker Prize or whether it's the National Book Award, but it's up for a big award. And I'm sure it'll be on our list of candidates for next year's BookTube Prize. But I really enjoyed it a great deal. It's the story of a very remote region called Kamchatka in Russia. It's a peninsula. And the northern part of the peninsula that connects to the mainland is so wild and forbidding, no one really crosses it. You either approach it by boat or by plane, or you don't go. So it's not a place that's easy to get into or out of. There's a weird budding of cultures between the indigenous people of the region who live in the north of Kamchatka and the Russian citizens who have moved there as business moves there. And so there's a cultural divide between some of the people, and the way that the police forces kind of ignore people from the north, the indigenous peoples. But the story is two girls disappear. They're kidnapped. We witnessed it right in the very beginning of the book. We witnessed their kidnapping. And then the rest of the book, month by month, each month is a different chapter, and each month covers a different character's story, but all the characters are interwoven either through their relationship to the people involved in this family with the kidnapped girls, or the police force, or the reporters, or somehow they have a tangential relationship to this story that goes on. And so it talks about the search for the two girls, the lack of resources devoted to finding the girls, and so on. I found it absolutely compelling reading. Now, I have kind of a bizarre love of Russia from my time there back in 2007. I was nowhere near Kamchatka, however, so this was completely new for me. And Julia Phillips is a debut author. This is her first novel, and I really found it to be gripping reading. So this is one I didn't expect to like, and really did end up enjoying quite a bit. And then just today, I finished a backlist title. Earlier this year, I read The Editor by Stephen Rowley and really enjoyed it. I thought it was very easy to read, very lighthearted in some ways, but also touching in some ways. So I decided I'd go back and read his debut novel, which I've heard a lot of people have praised it. And it's Lily and the Octopus. And the story is about the author's dachshund, Lily, who is getting up there in years. She's like 12 and a half. And she has a tumor or a growth on her head, which the author calls her octopus. And he has all these fantasies about it being a real octopus attacking his dog. And it's kind of over the top in some ways, but it's also a projection of how lonely the narrator is. He's not in a relationship. His last relationship, his boyfriend cheated on him, and he hasn't been with anybody since. He's had no luck dating. He has some friends, but they're, of course, busy with their lives. And so he's extremely lonely, and Lily becomes his life. And when she starts to get sick because of this growth, he's having trouble coping with it. So it's his journey in coping with the demise of his aging dog. And we also get a lot of the history about Lily. And he imagines that he talks to Lily and that Lily talks to him. And he has wild dreams and wild fantasies about fighting the octopus at sea. Some of it's really funny, but it's also kind of touching, even though I think it's probably a little over the top. I think I enjoyed The Editor a little bit more. So those are the 5 I finished. One really terrific read, 2 okay reads, and 2 that really didn't work for me, which I guess is a fair batting average, 1 out of 5 that you really enjoyed. What I am reading now, I'm still working on A Little History of Literature by John Sutherland. I don't read more than 1 chapter of that a day, and I'm not reading in it every single day. So that's going to last a little while for me. To replace Dune as my dog walking book, I picked up the 3rd book in Louise Penny's Inspector Gamache series of mysteries. I really enjoyed the first 2, and I thought, I'll try one on audio. And it's good. It's going quickly, and it passes the time on dog walks. But I don't think I'm enjoying the audio for this as much as I would enjoy the actual text version. I miss some of the little zingers, some of the small connections. I'm having to go back and listen to parts more than once because some of the characters who aren't standard characters from the town of the village of Three Pines. They're new just for this book. I'm not really sure how they're tied to each other because I'm not getting all the connections I get when I normally read a book in text. So I don't think I'll continue with that series on audio. I'll certainly continue with it in text. But I'll do this third one on audio and then I'm picking up one of those a month, basically. I think there are 15 of them now, and so I still have a year's worth, and then I'll have to wait for the next one. The ones that I'm reading by text, I usually try to read 4 at a time. 2 of them will be new fiction works from 2019. One will be a nonfiction work, and then the 4th category is kind of a free-form category. It's either a backlist title that I've been meaning to read, or something from my physical TBR at home that I have neglected. I was kind of on a campaign to get my physical TBR at home down to 0. And then I got really wrapped up in reading all the new releases for the BookTube Prize, which I'm not including in that TBR because then it would explode. And so I put that on hold, and I've made no progress, and the list has swollen back up to about 60 titles. So I'm going to try to pick up 1 or 2 a month that way. From my TBR at home. So the 2 that I'm reading that are 2019 fiction releases, one is a very short book out from Grey Wolf Press, I believe it is, and it's called Machine by Susan Steinberg. And this is kind of an experiment in narrative form. The chapter, I think there are like a dozen chapters. The whole book's only 150 pages long. There are a dozen chapters or so, and they're all linked up as a single unit, basically. The chapters don't end necessarily with a full stop period before it moves on to the next chapter. And in fact, the first chapter is just this stream of phrases linked by semicolons. They're not even independent clauses, which you're supposed to link by semicolon. But she's experimenting with form. One chapter will look like a poem on the page, perhaps. One will look like little journal entries. It's kind of weird, but it's going really fast, and it's kind of interesting because it's an unnamed narrator. I'll tell you more about it when I finish it next week. The second one that I'm reading is the one I mentioned in my recent book haul, and that's Alice Hoffman's new book, The World That We Knew. This is a historical novel set, at least initially set in 1941 in Berlin. As things fall apart for Jews in Berlin, it's focused on this family and this woman's attempt to save her family. She has an invalid mother who can't move, though. She's paralyzed, and she has a young daughter, I think 10 or 11 or 12, who almost gets raped by a German soldier. And so she realizes she has to do whatever she can to survive. And I was wrong in my book haul when I said this doesn't sound like one of Alice Hoffman's magical books. There is an element of that in there where she's talking about Jewish mysticism and the idea of creating a golem. So that comes into play. The first 50 pages of it were terrific. I can't wait to read more. My nonfiction book this week is kind of a chunkster. It's The Outlaw Ocean by Ian Urbina. And it's this journalist's accounts of all these different stories that he's followed over the years of what amounts to the Wild West on the ocean. It's the largest frontier on our planet, and it's the least regulated and least policed of all the frontiers. And I read the first chapter last night. Each one is a separate essay about a different event or group of people. And I read the first one last night, which was almost 50 pages long, and it is absolutely gripping. The writing is perfect. It sucks you right in, and even though it's a fairly technical topic at times, you never get lost in the technical aspects. It's always about the people involved in the crimes and the challenges. So I'm looking forward to that one. It's called The Outlaw Ocean. Just came out a couple of weeks ago. And then the one I'm going to start tomorrow, I don't really know a lot about. It's The Summer Wives by Beatrice Williams. This is one of those that's been on my physical TBR at home for a while, and my random number generator picked its number, so I'm going to pick that one up next. I do know it's a post-World War II story. It's set in 1951 some kind of a family drama on an island off the coast of New England. So it's like a local community drama, but I don't know anything else about it, what kind of themes run through it. I have not started it. I'll start that this weekend sometime. So there you have it. It is October. It is autumn. It is 98 degrees in Durham today. It's miserable, but fortunately, this may be the end of the summer. Tomorrow it's going to be just cracking 90. And then in time for our bookstore crawl on Saturday, the high is going to be in the mid 70s. Thank goodness. Fall weather is finally arriving. Maybe it took the BookTube Prize Festival to bring in some decent weather, but it looks like the week after that, the highest it's going to be is 80 or 81, which is still too hot for October. But climate change is a hoax. We all know that. But I am anxious for the heat to go away. I'm anxious to meet everybody who's coming in for the weekend and to announce the prize on Saturday evening. And then I get to spend the next 3 months reading like crazy, getting ready to start this prize cycle all over again in January, and hopefully with both fiction and nonfiction. I'm really looking forward to the nonfiction division. And I hope enough people are too, that they'll sign up to judge. Otherwise, it won't be able to happen. But I would love for us to be able to run both divisions at the same time. It's just, that'd be an awesome expansion of this year's experiment with the prize. So have a good weekend. Please check back Saturday night at 8 o'clock. Kendra Winchester has promised me that she will guide me through the live streaming portion for my channel, so we'll be able to live stream the announcement video, the announcement of the BookTube Prize winner, and then I will talk to you again in a normal video, as normal as my videos ever get, sometime early next week. Have a great weekend, everybody. Bye-bye.